Good evening, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of Supply Chain Talks, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our speakers, participants, and industry colleagues joining us today for this timely webinar. Regional Logistics Under Pressure, Navigating Supply Chain Risk Amid Strait of Hormuz Disruptions. Thank you all for taking the time to be part of this important discussion. Across the region, supply chains continue to operate in an environment where uncertainty, disruption, volatility are becoming increasingly common. For logistics leaders like all of us, this means managing far more than just transportation and movement of goods. It means ensuring continuity, protecting service levels, managing cost pressures, maintaining customer confidence, and making faster, better decisions in a very rapidly changing environment. The current disruptions impacting key regional trade corridors have once again highlighted just how critical logistics resilience has become. They have also reminded us that supply chain agility is no longer a nice to have capability. It is now a business necessity. Today's session is intended to be practical, constructive, and business focused. Our objective is to better understand the logistics challenges organizations are currently facing, explore the operational and strategic responses being adopted by industry leaders, who we have amidst us right now, and discuss what companies can do to strengthen resilience going forward. We are privileged to have an excellent panel of experienced logistics leaders with us today. Our moderator for today's session is no other than Mr. Farooq Shaikh, CEO of LogiPoint. Joining him on the panel are Tobias Maier, CEO, Middle East and Africa for DHL Global Forwarding, Lee, Regional CEO, IMEA region, Hellmann Worldwide Logistics, Haris, CEO, GCC region with GCES Logistics, and Serge, Managing Director for Saudi Arabia and Bahrain with Kuehne+Nagel. Thank you all for joining us and for taking the time to share your insights with our audience. A big thank you and a big applause for our panel. We will begin with the panel discussion. It should last approximately 75 minutes, which will be followed by a 15 minutes of Q&A session from the participants. I would encourage everyone attending to post their questions in the chat during the session or raise their hand at the end of the session and we'll take the question directly from you. And we will try to take as many questions as possible towards the end, as we need to close by 90 minutes. Okay, thank you. With all this said, I will now hand over the mic to Farooq. So Farooq, over to you.
Thank you, Noman. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, everyone. We have a distinguished guest in today's panel who are quite well known in the industry in this region. There was a time when we used to calculate black swan events in like 50-year, 25-year, and 100-year horizons. But the last 5 years, the way they have transpired, it seems like it's a never-ending roller coaster. And whether this is becoming a new normal or it is a challenge, but every challenge is bringing a different kind of opportunity, as well as a different mindset, because the source of that challenge is quite different, and it moves from one geographical region to another within Middle East. So today we will be talking with our distinguished guests as to how they see this recent phenomena is different from the past, what has happened since COVID or Suez disruption or Bab el-Mandab, and what exactly needs to be done actually so that we are ready for such supply chain shocks going forward. Okay, I'll start with Tobias, who I have had the pleasure of sharing quite a few panels over the past 5 years, actually. And here we are again. So Tobias, first thoughts as to how you see the world today.
Interesting. I think, like you said, I think we were the last panel, was it in November here in Dubai? Well, number one, I think, at least for my case and for our company, because one of the first things we did is look after our people, is that the COVID vibes are back in many dimensions. So a lot of home office working. I think a lot of people are getting a bit frustrated with it. At the same time, everybody starts to realize how crucial logistics is and how complicated logistics can be in the chaos. So I think the importance of our industry is becoming very clear. At the same time, I would personally say, and I will be interested to learn from my dear colleagues, when we had COVID, we were talking about more resilient supply chains, etc. When things went back to normal, it was all about saving the last 50 fills on the shipment and squeezing out whatever cost we could. So now, of course, we have, I think, quite a bottleneck. What is different this time versus COVID is that not just the supply chains are disrupted, especially in our part of the world, but also the impact it has on oil supply and bunkers and jet fuels and what that will mean. And especially if we think 4-6 weeks ahead, and if the strait remains closed, that could become quite challenging. And we also have the phenomenon that the air freight capacity taken out for Southeast Asia from this event and the Gulf carriers is quite a knock-on impact. So we have certain knock-on impacts. GCC for sure impacted the most. Southeast Asia, I would say second, and then all the rest of the world with the oil prices, inflation. And I would personally say some people are still not realizing the extent of crisis we're already in, whether the strait opens tomorrow or not. But that would be my personal take, and I would be very interested to learn what my dear colleagues think about the current situation.
Thanks, Tobias. We will pick on some of the items you mentioned. But before we go deep into it, Lee, your take on this?
Yeah, I think, I'm happy the way Tobias started as well. I think it's people first. We need to make sure that the teams are safe. And it's difficult because we need to keep companies going. We need to keep supply chains active. At the same time, we need to make sure that our people are safe. And working from home, like I said, is a bit of COVID vibe. And in COVID, also very difficult for our warehousing teams. Obviously, when they're working on critical supplies, they need to go to the warehouses. They need to be able to be there. At the same time, it's dangerous for them. And we always have to keep in mind. I think maybe we did learn from COVID. We know that pricing became very sensitive, but I think companies have been able to react a bit quicker this time. They realized what's going on, at least to a certain extent. This is not the same, but companies at least have got better plans. They've been more agile, and they do understand that supply chains are disruptive. I was going to come to it a bit later as well, but also we see that the role of supply chain now also has more, let's say, authority, not only from logistics, from the supply chain production supply teams within companies. They are able to much more influence the behavior of the company, how they react, and things like that. So it's challenging, I think. And Tobias hit on as well, there's a lot of indirect impact as well. Speaking to people, for example, I'm speaking to our country manager in Pakistan. People have a limited amount of fuel. They get 25 liters of fuel a week per person. In 2 weeks' time to 3 weeks' time, they will run out of fertilizer. This will have then impact that they will not be able to grow rice. They will not be able to have, coconuts, which are a core part of their diet. I'm South African. Diesel prices will go up 50%, between 30 and 50% in the coming weeks. So this will affect every part of the supply chain. And like it was just said, if everything goes back to normal tomorrow, it's going to take us 6 months to a year, I think, at least, to get back on track. But I do feel that we're in a very resilient part of the world. I was explaining to somebody today, I believe if this had happened in other parts of the world, no ways they would have handled it as well as what it's being dealt with here.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Lee. Serge, I will just, on that one, building on this one, between air, land, and sea, where do you see the biggest challenge?
So I definitely think there's a challenge in every mode of transport these days. Maybe sea would have bigger challenges on a regional level, as more air logistics solutions are in place, more airports are up and running. Some of them were not running for a while. Now they came back to operating. So I think the sea logistics would be the most affected, especially with when we look at two sides of it. The shipments that were already in transit before the regional situation started, and the end of voyage and everything else that they faced, and the other shipments that are currently being booked with the new challenges, with the land bridge solutions, with everything that's happening. So I think sea shipments would be the most affected, but not to take away from the other modes of transport challenges as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Haris, you are involved in freight quite extensively. So do you agree with Serge on this one that sea is the issue, or I believe your struggles have been also on the land side as well?
Right, I would agree with Serge. There is no one mode, where you're facing the challenges. It's across the board the same issues that you're facing, right? A lot of lanes that were already activated even before these crises, right, actually are being tested now. Okay, so you have a capacity issue, you have a reliability issue. Okay, you really don't know, at what point the bottleneck is. Okay, is the congestion happening at Hurfakan? Is the congestion happening at the boat, right? uh, it's a complete collapse of predictability. Okay, so you're managing the customer expectation at the same time you're trying to find the right solution. Okay, but what I believe today is ocean obviously is the biggest bottleneck today. You really don't know, at what point the stranded cargo is going to be discharged, and even if it is discharged, right? Okay, whether the transporters are going to be available on those lanes or not, right? These are all question marks, right? And with each day, we're answering these questions to our customers, right? So with each day passing, right, the situation is evolving. There are a lot of relaxation, being given by the regulator as well, right? Which is obviously, laying a seamless path for us and eventually for the customer. But these are testing times and testing our resilience model, right? That we built during the COVID.
Okay. But we witnessed post-COVID that we went back to our inertia, that what we used to do, except for probably remote working arrangements and a bit of a business continuity paradigm. Uh, as far as commercial relationships were concerned, or long-term partnerships were concerned, or even the pricing mechanisms were concerned, we went to pre-COVID days that, okay, COVID is done and it's fine. It's a race to the bottom now, as Tobias was mentioning, that is to the last 50 fills. Okay. It doesn't seem that we built capacity or we paid for capacity or invested in that capacity to be able to address just in case kind of a scenario rather than just in time. So Tobias, your take on this, how is DHL geared up for facing these challenges?
Yeah, in principle, we are well geared up because we are in the region for 5 decades, right? And we have a pretty big presence. And I think, as usual, a crisis always gives opportunity to do things better. And I think it makes certain things, how shall I say? It's like Churchill said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So, for example, one of the good things is we work very closely with our other divisions, which is very good for us. And I think that in the crisis now, everybody is very quickly aligned, and we all focus on providing solutions, which I think is really, really good. I still believe logistics. I think that for me is the big learning out of COVID. It will always be an efficiency game, and I think the willingness of customers to pay for true resilience is really limited. Let's see. I'm interesting to see the air freight routings and how much the Middle East will be used in the next 1 or 2 years. But then also the question mark will be how will it be in 3-4 years, because people then forget very quickly again. I still believe on the flip side, once this crisis is over and we come to a period of more stability, there might be a good reach or a good opportunity for the whole region to be closer together. I think, Haris, you mentioned, or Serge, you mentioned the simplification regulations. A lot of common sense is coming to this region where countries try to protect their own interest, never looking at the bigger picture of the GCC. And perhaps this crisis is now removing some of these unnecessary regulations, which would truly create a more connected logistics hub. And perhaps everybody sees that if the cake is growing overall, then my piece of the cake might become bigger, rather than trying to always get some part of the other pieces from the other people. So all in all, I think in the long run, I think it will go back to what we've seen, Farooq, unfortunately. But I also hope that some of the things which are happening now will be here for long term, especially a lot around regulations and truly creating the GCC as a logistics hub.
Well, Serge, you mentioned about ocean being the biggest challenge at the moment, and as compared to land freight or air freight and everything. But shipping lines have unfortunately become notorious that they profit gouging, and they take, as mentioned by Tobias, don't let any crisis go to waste. So they take full advantage of it as compared to air cargo carriers. How do you see the role of vendors in our network planning and the development and trying to address, or in our efforts to address these challenges going right now, which is happening?
Do you want me to have issues with the carriers, or?
No, I don't want to. Everyone has, they don't want you to have this, but there are issues. Like, why do you believe that in shipping line there is a higher propensity to slap on extra charges, whereas air cargo carriers, we are witnessing the same thing in land freight as well. Similar.
True.
But so we are not pointing fingers at it, but I think it's about price sensitivity. To
absolutely.
these things.
Absolutely. No, I think the situation we're facing today is, at least what we've seen so far, is a bit calmer than the wild area we've witnessed during COVID, from a price increase perspective. Definitely we were more ready than the pandemic period, but the challenge today is something that is a bit also out of hand. So when we talk about bunker, the fuel, the insurance, so all these are factors that also the carriers, and my role here is not to defend them, but definitely there are certain factors that also they cannot control and would definitely have an impact on the prices. The capacity, the routing, the rerouting, they also have been losing money in different aspects for the past few weeks. So there should be something to cover for those losses. So we would understand some of the increases that are happening here and there. I would also go back to what I mentioned earlier, that those increases are a bit more controlled than what we've seen in the pandemic period. There is also an increase in the prices in the air freight and the road transport, as you know. But I think at the moment, because the sea movement is most affected because of the situation, there will be a lot of talks about prices and discussions about how we can control them. One thing for certain that I would maybe bring up is that since the regional situation started, we felt more coordination and cooperation between all the parties involved. We even felt more understanding from the customers, because many of our customers went through this few years ago. So the discussions have been a bit easier, especially with the prices discussions and the brainstorming about new routings. But yeah, it doesn't get easier. Even as Tobias mentioned, when the war ends tomorrow, it will unfortunately take time for things to calm down.
Thanks, Serge. Lee, coming to you, Hellmann is dealing with usually the sensitive cargoes. Hellmann has a name in pharma and food and everything, which actually adds another dimension or of complexity, because one, short shelf lives, and second thing is these are some of the life-saving aspects of pharmaceutical product. So how do you see Hellmann ensuring that the client's needs are served, the network remains agile and operative, and how do we maintain meet the expectations of our end users?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think the advantage we have with these critical products is obviously the government also realizes very quickly this crucial for that the country can remain supplied. So basically, when the war broke out, within hours, we were in contact with the authorities in the different countries, discussing suppliers, discussing regulations, discussing supply chains, and it happens every single day. Our healthcare teams, for example, form part of the region of the country-based task teams assessing supply chains, looking at inventories, looking at movement solutions. So actually, for us, it's an advantage because the government's also supporting us very closely. They come very much and said, okay, what are your roadblocks? What do you need to do? How do we make sure you have staff on the ground? How do you make sure that you're going to have electricity, that the supply chains are going to run, that you're going to have trucks available to move cargo, that you're going to be able to distribute? And obviously during COVID, we built up some of those business continuity plans that support that. But once again, being critical products, you do get a lot of support from the authorities, from the government, from the ministries across the region. And it's really a daily discussion. It's also speaking to our customers, asking them what do they want, where do they want the inventories, how do they want it moved. And these companies also, the healthcare companies particularly, are very resilient when it comes to these type of, I know it's a black swan event, but they are well prepared also to ensure that when these things happen, they have the plans ready to go, their people are well trained and well organized. So that also helps us actually to help them.
Good. So Harris, at the practical level, what sort of network changes have you done, or is this still being contemplated to ensure that GES regional or global business continues to move on?
In order to address this problem, when this all started, right, we actually divided this into two parts, right? So the first part was to recover the stranded cargo. And the second part was to come up with solutions, right, where the business continues, the business that we nominated for, and the local businesses, the future inquiries, right, we're able to manage, right? So we came up with the products, right? For example, we launched aid to land model. We launched Jeddah Gateway, model to GCC countries, right? And we did that quite quickly, even before the regulator, right, actually announced a lot of relaxations in it, right? So with that, we've already started engaging our customers in planning for future. Okay, with the second, action that we took, right? We've already heavily engaged with them in planning how the future shipments are going to come if in case the crisis persists, because anyways, even today, right, there is a big question mark on the cost and reliability level, okay, which it's completely beyond our control because it's an exogenous environment, okay. But we believe, right, that the products, that we floated in the last couple of days are really helping our customers, right, in planning the future supply chains.
All right. Okay. So from Tobias, coming back to you on this one, what practical actions have been taken in CES? Now, DHL has been in the region for many, many years, and at foremost, especially when it comes to express and air cargo, but also in freight forwarding and now recently into contract logistics as well, getting into it. So you have a full suite, but every independent service works differently. But when you look at all of them together, what do you think DHL has been doing in last 4 weeks, let me put it this way, to ensure that Gulf is covered, the East is covered, and also the West Red Sea coast is also covered of the GCC?
Yeah, I think what is a bit different this time is that we have a bit of a moving target, right? So the problem we have is that the drone attacks have impacted airports and ports. So we had to be flexible even with the alternative ports and airports and keep changing our routing. So the big advantage we have is that aviation has their own planes and their own flights. Unfortunately, they were first stuck in Bahrain, but we got them out and we can now redeploy them. So we have now different hubs we use in Saudi and Oman to bring in the cargo, and then we have the road freight network to connect to the whole GCC. The big advantage we there have, or the big challenge at the beginning was, of course, the backlog, which have built up in the origins over the first 7-8 days because we couldn't fly in a lot. They have been all cleared out, and now we work together across divisions to ensure that all the cargo which is urgent will get the required uplift capacity and comes into the region. Everything is connected with the trucking network. If the colleagues in Express need more trucks, we have enough trucks available to supply them to the Express colleagues. And then last but not least, if people need additional warehouse space because they want to build some reserve and they want to bring in some extra goods, we have the big advantage of using the warehouse space which is available with supply chain. We lost Farooq now. Yeah, so that's a bit the situation for us. And the good thing is that we keep having regular webinars we do where all the 3 divisions work together, also something we didn't do in the past. And I think that also drove a lot of collaboration in the last 4 weeks, which for us is actually being a big company is not a given. And actually the crisis really helped facilitate that collaboration. Farooq, you're coming back.
Farooq is back.
Yes, it is power shocks. Inshallah, there won't be any water shocks. Okay, but this is now part and parcel of our life.
It's good that you mention it because, we have enough troubles and then the weather last week comes on top. I mean,
Yes.
Pictures in Sharjah and Ras Al Khaimah were really horrific. Huh? I mean,
yes. Yeah. No, but I got the gist of it. So let's move on to Serge. Serge, in KSA and Bahrain, Kuehne+Nagel is primary asset light model. So let's talk about supply side. Now we talked about freight and everything. Now on the supplier side or the vendor side, what sort of challenges there are now you are facing, and how are you ensuring that you have enough support from vendors to deliver to your clients?
That's a very nice question. So definitely when you run an asset light operation, you need to ensure that you have the right vendors and partners, and that's primarily what we had in place. So we definitely have very strong and solid partners that we have been working with for many years, and with that we always ensured that there's a contingency, so there's always a backup for each and every type of service that we offer, so we don't depend only on one vendor. So when the crisis hit, definitely we had to explore if there's a further need for more, let's say, transporters, and that's an area that I think was on everyone's concern. With Saudi supplying the GCC countries, there were concerns that maybe the transporters within Saudi would not have enough trucks to supply the Saudi market and the GCC market. So we definitely worked to onboard more vendors, that's for sure. We even worked with many of our current partners to transform some of their domestic trucks into TIR transit trucks, so we can use them across the region. And most importantly, we worked with our friends and colleagues within the logistics industry and the Ministry of Transport and Logistics to share some of the concerns that we have seen in the market, to revisit some of the regulations. And that's something that maybe I can take here a second to commend the authorities, the Ministry of Transport and Logistics, Zatka, Mawani, for all of their efforts. So they have been working very closely with all of us, like not only Kuehne+Nagel, but every logistics partner to see what challenges we have and how they can support us. And we've seen in the past weeks that many of the regulations eased in terms of age of truck, getting empty trucks into Saudi to load and then go back to GCC. So a lot of those decisions are really helping us to ensure that even though we're going through crisis, we're able to sustain and deliver.
On this point, Serge, you mentioned it, and I will pass it on to Haris, and before coming to Lee for a different take. Haris, so this entry of empty trucks. Now, within GCC, we always had this challenge of return leg, empty return leg, for trucks either going from Saudi to any other country and coming back empty, or trucks coming from GCC countries to Saudi and going back empty. And that made our whole land freight model very inefficient and costly as compared to, I would say, EU. keeping all other factors constant. Do you think now there is a possibility that our internal systems will be good enough to see, or there will be visibility into the system that there is what kind of capacity is available, and then the transporters will have opportunity to minimize that waste and improve their returns on return legs so that they are able to offer better price to end users?
Yeah, absolutely, there is a possibility, but is it going to happen now amidst the crisis or to address the current situation? No, it will take a lot of time. Okay, the market is fragmented. Okay, and now under these crises, the opportunity is there actually, right? And I guess, right, the one who was already having captive capacities are actually, right, moving the cargoes. But that time is also not far when the regulator is actually going to bring all the transporters on one platform, to ease down the price pressure here. Okay. So I think the visibility is the key here. Okay, and for the transporters to make money. For now, what I've experienced, because we're seeing on the ground that it's a return trip, right? Whoever is booking with the customers, they're all going for it. Now, when we talk about the inbound shipments to Saudi from the GCC countries, it's that country's number plate which is bringing in the containers and taking it back. That's how it's happening. So I guess so. Yeah, yeah. This is very much on the table. I guess the regulator is also already considering it, right, by connecting it with other government authorities in different countries of GCC.
Lee, coming to you now. This is from when one of the earlier questions which we were discussing about ocean, land freight or air freight. Now, ocean freight, of course, has centuries old tradition, commercial law, Hague-Visby rules and everything, which protect the ocean going vessels, because of which they are able to pass on the additional costs to the end users. Now, we as intermediaries or logistic service providers, okay, do we have the similar kind of flexibility in our commercial contracts that we can just send a notice as a 3PL or a contract register notice to our client and tell them that from this day onwards, this is going to be the rate, or this is going to be the delivery charge or anything? So how do our 3PL contract logistics commercial contracts different from the carrier commercial contracts?
I think if we go back and look a little bit, first of all, why carriers have such agreements in their contracts. I mean, they make a major capital commitment from a shipping line. They buy a vessel, it's a major investment. They run it in general at very tight margins over many, many years. It's a 20-year and 25-year investment, and you need a bit of security and safety, because if you didn't have that built into the contracts, I think we would struggle to get the carriers into the market. Same with airlines. It's a major investment. Contract logistics, we build a warehouse, you spend millions to build it. You need the security. Do we as freight forwarders have that same flexibility in our agreements? To a certain extent, we do, but I think what we rely on, all of us around this table, is also collaboration and discussion with our customers. I mean, you saw what happened now. None of us colleagues around here, none of the companies ran out and said, force majeure, our contracts are no longer in place, we are going to dishonor everything. We worked with our customers, we worked with the carriers, we worked with suppliers. I mean, Hellmann has a core value, relationships matter. That's the first thing you'll learn when you come to Hellmann. And I think that goes from carriers, it goes to customers. So when you do end up this environment, we understand very much the pressure that the carriers are on, why we have war risk surcharges, why we have all these kind of additional costs. And we do then take that to our customers and try our best to make sure they have pricing visibility, because that's really what everybody's very stressed about right now. So we don't have the same flexibility maybe written into our contracts or enforceable at the same level, but I think there's good reason for that, because we also have a lot more flexibility when it comes to what business we take on board, how long those contracts run for, how we want to price those contracts, how we want to put credits in place. So maybe to a different extent, but I think there's reasoning behind it.
All right. Okay, good. Now, I'll go about 4 or 5 years back. Now, most of the carriers, when we started like 15 years ago, carriers were independent, but now most of the carriers have also entered into an integrated logistics space. And we saw during COVID that uh, capacity was held hostage, and because there was a certain, of course, as an organization, you want to put forward. Now, I'm not going to put DHL on the spot in this scenario because DHL is also a carrier in this. But do you think that situation has now eased out, has become a bit more transparent, or is it still that if there is a carrier, it has an advantage in also providing the integrated logistics services? Or now market has now absorbed that shock and the players have aligned their strategies, so all the players are being served equally?
You asking me, Farooq?
Starting with you, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, I think this is it's always a big topic to being discussed, but you know, we all in freight forwarding are competitive. I think we have a lot of competitors. And the way I look at it is we have some other competitors, but as Lee just explained, you know, shipping lines are very, very good in managing vessels, making 25 years investments and managing capacity and utilizing the capacity. Something very different than running a freight forwarding operation. I can tell you from experience, if colleagues move from DHL Express to DHL Global Forwarding, they have to relearn what freight forwarding is versus Express. You know, selling Express service is something different than selling a freight forwarding service. And I think it requires a different mindset. I think it requires a different approach. Whether the carriers are now better equipped to manage the different reality of being in freight forwarding or being in logistic services versus running a shipping line, that will be down to the shareholders of the carriers. As we said, we're always open for competition, but I personally cannot say that anything is just not going in the correct way as it should be in an open market.
Serge, do you agree with the assessment, or do you have a contradicting opinion?
No, I definitely agree. And maybe I would add that the market is really big. It's wide, and there's room for everyone. And I think it always go back to what customers are looking for, shippers or importers or exporters. So uh, in some cases, the needs that they're looking for fall perfectly in the hands of a carrier that is providing those integrated solutions. And in other cases, a forwarder would be able to provide solutions that a carrier cannot, with the flexibility and stuff. So it's like a, like any market with the supply and demand. It goes back to what customers need, but I don't see carriers offering, as Tobias mentioned, what we provide. So there's a big difference, but there are certain definitely areas where we compete on. But again, the market is wide and big, and there's room for everyone.
So moving on, of course, now we discussed the practical aspects of it. Now let's go back to our customers, where we see service versus price versus margin. Okay. Harris, what has been now? Lee had mentioned that there has been understanding and there is a collaboration and everything, but at the end of the day, there is usually a limit. And given the scenarios, unfortunately, we usually don't hit the ceiling or get to the ceiling without having some attrition in the process. So if you have to rank, how will you rank it in 1, 2, 3? Is the quality or the price or the margin?
It's not a straightforward answer to that, right? Because if I may speak for my customers, right? I mean, there are two different distinct types of customers, right, which are having very different approaches, right? And I believe generally, let me give you an answer generally, right? I believe at this stage, there is a clear shift from cost optimization to continuity assurance. Okay. But let's talk about, the first set of customers, which are a small, medium-sized organizations. Okay. They're actually holding back orders. They're waiting. Okay. For them, cost is clearly the dominant driver here. Okay. And obviously, we already know that even working with them will have to eat up something from our margins. Okay. Now we're also prioritizing, we value a relationship with our customers, right? And we are ensuring that the continuity remains there. The other set of customers, which are larger organizations, multinational, are taking a very different approach, making deliberate trade-offs between cost, speed, reliability, and in most cases, reliability is winning. Okay. So for me, it's different. Okay. We go with critical supply chains. We take a very different approach with key customers, with key supply chains partners. Okay. We are actually right, even, finding the right ground between cost, margin, and reliability. But for some customers, it's just a matter of cost, which we respect it, right? And we're just waiting for them to give us the go ahead, right? We're all in business. Obviously, margin matters, but this is not a time, to simply look at margins. Okay, we have to find the right balance, in synchronization with our customer.
Okay. Lee, you said that we don't raise our hand up and declare force majeure. Okay. But then how do we handle KPIs or the SLAs?
That's a very good question, because obviously now, given the kind of situation, and probably, let's say, a lot of our systems are not set up for this rerouting for a huge amount of cargo moving to locations that don't have it. I think when it comes to the SLAs, I think it's all, and with the KPI, same thing, it falls into the same boat. It's really about communication. It's really about, and I think this is also what's placing a lot of pressure on the teams as well. You need to keep communicating so much with your customers, making them aware of where is the cargo, when it's moving, what they can expect, what pricing they can have around it. Staying connected to the carriers, also to the truckers. So we obviously have SLAs. I think our customers, somebody said it earlier, have been quite understanding, I must say, in this current circumstances, that it's difficult and that we are working in difficult, complex situations. So probably some of the KPIs will suffer at the moment. I think the SLAs will probably also come under pressure. But I think as long as we keep up that level of communication with our customers and share as much as we can, as we get information, we hand that across, we make sure we get their questions. Because I think we also have to understand that for many of our customers, they are an internal service provider at their company. They are the supply chain manager, the procurement manager. They're also under a huge amount of pressure. They also have KPIs and SLAs. So it's also maybe to support them to, as best they can, to perform internally.
This is one question, it's a thought, actually. We talked about service. Let's move towards infrastructure now. And interconnected infrastructure. Now we have spoken about Hafid or Etihad Rail, and it is in the world, so Saudi land bridge and everything. Assuming we had that, would have been made any difference today? So I'll start with Haris in this one, and I'll go all the way. So Haris, do you believe that it would have made difference if we had the interconnected railway network among all GCC countries?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. See, this would have given us another options to manage these supply chains. Okay, today we are practically weighing the balance between reliability, between timely deliveries. Let's not talk about timely deliveries, right? It's already delayed now. Okay, but the more options you have it, right, the more flexibility you can provide to your customers. If rail would have been there, it would have added another advantage. Saudi Rail is already there, right? And they've recently announced that they are going to do the service from eastern, to the side of Jordan, or at least, close to the border of Jordan. If that would have been here, we would have deployed the similar models that actually have been there in Europe. Okay, this would have eased down the job, especially in these crises.
Okay, Lee, your take on this one?
I think it would have made a difference, but then I think if you talk about what capacity you would be able to put on that rail with the amount of containers, for example, that had to move so quickly onto different routes. Obviously, I think Haris said it correctly. Any change like this helps. And I think going forward, you will see a big shift in what the infrastructure is going to look like in the future. So if it had existed, definitely it would have helped. But I think so many containers and such a shift so fast, it would have just lightened the load maybe, but I think it still would have kept, the system would have still been under the pressure that it's currently under.
Okay. Serge?
Yeah, nothing much to add. Maybe if you when we talk about resilience, we always talk about having multiple options. So it would have helped, but also having a fixed asset might also be a reason for additional risk. We've seen that with the ports or airports being hit in the GCC countries. So that rail being a fixed asset would maybe have been a target. It would have definitely helped having it, but we can never depend only on one mode of transport. So, yeah.
And Tobias?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the joint venture with Etihad Rail for the UAE Saudi transport, right? So, I mean, a train can carry 138 containers. So that's a lot of trucks you can save. And if you have a train an hour, then it could move actually quite some volumes. On the flip side, question mark, would we have enough assets and trailers and locomotives here? And if in normal times you can only fill 1, 2, 3 trains, right? You wouldn't have 20 just sitting and waiting, back to the point Lee made earlier on the investment and business cases. So I think I agree with Lee. I think it will most probably, knowing the GCC a little bit and how strategic and long-term thinking prevails here typically, I think after this crisis, certain people will have a look into this infrastructure and want to make sure this becomes a more reliable plan B. I mean, things like the pipeline, which is now getting leveraged, I think definitely pays off. But yeah, it's still many problems we still face. I mean, the fact that certain ports get very congested, that we have only limited ports available on the east side, these issues, these bottlenecks would have still existed.
Okay, great. Now, moving a bit more onto the processing side of it. We have had a GCC customs union, at least on paper, for many, many years. Okay. But we still have border checks, and borders in the past, depending on the mood and everything, situation and everything, have been a source of a bottleneck. Whether it's a Batha border between UAE and Saudi, or Kuwait border, or Qatar border and everything. And the whole idea behind GCC Custom Union was actually that it becomes a seamless movement of goods between one country to another country. Do you believe it is now, with all the recent relaxation of rules and regulations, it is something which is on the horizon, or is it still a long shot? I'll start with the Haris on that.
See, Farooq, actually, if we go back to 2018, when let's start with Saudi. Okay, when ZEDCA announced the implementation of VAT regulation, so they've already started working on the framework, the basic framework, which is going to connect the GCC. Okay, so at this stage, we really don't know that how it has evolved and how the countries have responded to it, right? But we know, of certain countries, let's say UAE, Saudi, Qatar, they've already implemented the VAT regime. So, and they very much was working on a unified platform. I believe connecting back again on that platform for the customs, okay, it's going to be very easy. I know at this stage, right, everybody is, is engaged in the firefighting, right? But if the regulator starts focusing on that, okay, this could be a game changer at this stage.
Okay. Tobias, what do you think? Because you have been engaged in the rail discussion.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I think. Well, we all know the FASAs, and I hope that the FASA delays will be limited this time. The reality is, I believe it's a big chance for the GCC to really fully create a common area and simplify, because I believe if Saudi, and then we all know Saudi wants to compete with the UAE to become a logistics hub. And I think what both countries would actually benefit from working much closer together, instead of trying to be the biggest competition for each other, because end of the day, a lot of the cargo will flow via the GCC from Asia to Europe, from Asia to Africa, or vice versa. So if the interconnectivity within the region is easier, it makes the whole proposition much more interesting. Let's see. I hope this will come as a consequence of the countries getting closer together. We shouldn't forget, it's not long ago, there was significant tension between the countries. 3-4 months ago, we were talking about different scenarios. So from that side, I think it's a big chance for things to become easier. And if the countries see the competitive edge they would have together versus the rest of the world, I think that's really something which will make this platform here even more attractive for the global trade.
Great. Lee, you have been in the region for a while. So how do you see it?
So I think if you take the cooperation of GCC, if you take that word, I don't think I've ever seen it ramp up so fast and so well. I've never seen it so active as what happened in the first few days of this conflict, how the countries started to work together. So when we talk about customs collaboration, I remember we had the call the first morning about the crisis. We said, oh, there's a problem at the border now, the trucks are getting stuck. And the next morning we had a call and said, no, it's fine, it's working again. I think to build on what Tobias said, this is a great chance. They've learned now that they actually need to work together. They are working together. So I think even when things stop, and they will stop soon, I hope, I think that the Customs Union will continue to think, okay, if this happens again, we need to be ready and we need to have things streamlined. So I think this, I don't want to say it's a positive comes out of this, but if there are some positives, I think it will help this, it'll accelerate and simplify this process for the future. I mean, I think it's going to change the way that the GCC behaves, because like Tobias said, you used to felt like you were competing. Saudi was competing with the UAE, was competing with Oman, they was competing with Bahrain, and all of a sudden now everybody's on the same team. We've all together, and we've all got to solve this problem together, and I think that's a positive.
All right. And Serge, your view on that?
Yeah, so I think this cooperation has been ongoing for many years, right? Since the GCC was set, and in the past maybe couple of years, a lot of improvements have happened when it comes to the 12-digit HS code implementation across more and more GCC countries. A lot of the regulations, the inspections procedures between countries, the coordination that has been ongoing between the GCC customs has been definitely improving. Now with the current situation, the actions that have been taken already, like the bank guarantee requirement that is now being dropped for transit shipments. This is a really good step from the Saudi side, and you know, the empty trucks entering, and all of these coordinations that have been ongoing would only tell you that we're heading in a better direction. Are we gonna be in an area where goods might move in between countries freely? I don't think so, because a lot of concerns when it comes to quality, when it comes to made in inspections, you know, a lot of things that might still be concerns between GCC customs, but there's definitely progress happening. And maybe also one point to add, that with the current situation, we've seen a lot of committees between the GCC customs that they have been creating to ease up a lot of green corridor movements between countries. And this only fortifies and strengthens the coordination between the GCC customs.
Okay, all right. Let's shift gears towards future planning, okay, and capital investments. Now, of course, DHL has already announced a couple of major investments in KSA. I understand Hellmann was looking at something but smaller. Do you think this will now, or organizations are going to take pause for a moment, or this is a structural reset because now the risk profile has changed? Or do you think that once we are through this crisis, then we will be back to normal and same, we'll just restart the we left it off? So Tobias, I will start with you from, I am aware Asmo is doing something, and then DHL just announced something in Riyadh. So How are you looking at it from a global perspective, the
Yeah, I mean,
risk appetite of this region?
we announced. I mean, okay, so my group CEO, who has almost the same name as me, he on Friday when we had the call with the Minister of Transportation from Saudi, he mentioned himself that Saudi is, I think, the most visited country from himself in the last 2 or 3 years. For us, Middle East is absolutely strategically important. We announced a 500 million euro investment. So we have sales on the one side, we have also the investment here in DWC. And when we published our numbers early March, it was a week into the crisis. I think our management had to talk more about the crisis than the results. But our boss made very clear that the 500 million euro investment is there to stay. And we have zero plans to change anything. I think for the future, the one big question mark is how will the landscape look like after this crisis? Yeah? Do we have a proper resolution of the situation where we can all have confidence in a peaceful setup? Or is it going to be a frozen conflict and we have to see how things will evolve? But nevertheless, I'm personally very optimistic for the region. And if things go the right direction, I'm pretty confident that we might be doing even more than the initial investment. So we'll have to see. But I'm cautiously optimistic despite all the short-term complications.
Lee, how is Hellmann Global is looking at it?
So I think same thing. I mean, you need to take a longer term view on the Middle East, and maybe we're all biased because we live here and we really love the area and we really think longer term, but I'm also optimistic. Will there be a pause? I think there will definitely be a pause right now, but a very short term pause. I think until people can figure out what the situation is, it makes sense to pause and see what it is. And then I think this will create a lot of opportunity. Change also always creates opportunity. So we will invest, and we definitely will invest in Saudi. I'm a huge fan of Saudi, a huge believer in the future of Saudi. I just think where people invest may change, but I don't think it will be less. I just think it might be different locations, a different focus. But I don't see it. I don't see it slowing down because I think those people that step away from the Middle East now will create opportunity for those that remain committed. And I think that's happened for the last years and years and years, for decades. When there's been a kind of a crisis, when you commit to the Middle East during that crisis, you definitely come out much stronger afterwards. So we still see, I'll reiterate what Tobias said, cautiously optimistic, but more on the optimistic.
All right, great. Good to hear. Harris, you being representing a local player with an international reach, obviously for you it should be simple, but from evaluation perspective or the business case viability perspective, do you think there will be any difference?
There is going to be a difference. Actually, even before the crisis, the Middle East opportunity, in particular in Saudi, was even bigger than any other opportunity in the world. Okay, so after the crisis, I believe Saudi is going to be at the center of attention. Okay, Red Sea is going to boom. Okay, there are a lot of going to be inflows to GCC, even with the crisis getting paused or getting resolved in the long term. Okay, companies are going to resort to their contingency plans. They're not going to stick with one route. They're going to be relying on multiple routes. Okay, where Saudi is going to play an important role. So the opportunity is going to be there. Everything is going to be on higher stakes, and we at GS, without even like recognizing this opportunity, right? We have been on our course for a lot of investments in the country. Okay, we did last year one of the biggest facility in the kingdom with 90,000 pilot positions in ambient, right? And we actually have the same plan for Jeddah. Okay, we are going to invest in trucks, so we can expand, and it's just because of the opportunity that's there in Saudi Arabia, that's there in the Middle East.
Okay, great. Serge, for you, a slightly different. Kuehne+Nagel has been asset light. Will this give a reason to think that Kuehne+Nagel, to serve the clients better, should at least have some asset base in the kingdom? UAE, Kuehne+Nagel has some, but not in KSA.
Sure.
So will the strategy change?
So basically, we even though we're asset light in Saudi, it doesn't mean that we're not investing in Saudi. So there are already some investments that happened, and more investments will be coming. We were actually exploring few ideas just before this regional situation happens. And I think because of what happened for the past 1 month, I think not only Kuehne+Nagel, everyone is invited to revisit their plans and see if we need to change some of our plans because of what happened. The current war maybe opened our eyes on certain gaps in the logistics market. And I think there are now new ideas that we need to maybe explore and see how we can tackle. One more thing that also made it clear to everyone in the GCC that Saudi is definitely a place to invest in, being a key positioned country to support the GCC logistics. So there are definitely now more opportunities to look into, and we will always be on the hunt for investments.
Great. Okay. It has been an interesting discussion, and we had I have plenty of questions, but I just checked the board, and I think Noman, we have been bombarded with quite a number of questions and comments already. So maybe we will shift our discussion towards answering those questions, because some of those will overlap with our discussion points as well. Okay. So
Farooq,
is,
I would request
yes,
you take on the questions directly from you picked your questions and you put it to the
yes,
panel.
yes. So I will ask this question. This is addressed to both Lee and Tobias on the strategic planning aspects. I think we have already addressed a part of it, but if you have to give one advice to end users or clients that post-crisis, what it could be, that what we should do differently, what will your advice be to them? So first I will give it to Tobias, and then I will go to Lee.
One advice, what to do different after the crisis? That's a good question. I think the one thing, and especially looking at the situation for ocean freight, and I think that's something where I hope the crisis will still be a facilitator, is really how we better use digital tools, IoT as an example, to manage the situation in crisis. I think there is still too much chaos when it comes to shipping lines. Where is which container? Where will it be dropped? Where, in which depot in the UAE has it been unloaded? We have these new depots in Sharjah, right? Sacha and the other one. I think really making a step forward in leveraging the tools we have at hand, and better really having a fully integrated IoT landscape. That would be something which I would really welcome to see. In terms of the customers themselves, very hard to say, because I still believe in the end of the day, it will be a big push for efficiency. That's global competition. And I think if you, there will always be the cost of capital for holding extra inventory. There will be the inefficiencies in not following the best supply chains. And to absorb these extra costs just for the Black Swan event, I'm not sure it's going to be the most compelling business case, because all these big companies are also scrutinized by investors and shareholders, and if you have to explain for years why you take the extra cost, it's very difficult. Then just to be in a better position in a crisis, and then in the crisis it will be chaos, and everybody will understand if you have a problem. So I think the whole way how these things work makes me limited hope that things will fundamentally change there. But I think digitalization and really using AI, IoT, all these new upcoming trends in a better way would be one big hope, and that will make this industry much more effective.
Thank you, Tobias. Well said. Lee, to you.
I think Tobias has built a good base there. I think if the crisis ends tomorrow, there's no ways that supply chains in the Middle East go back to the way they were before. So if I was going to give advice, I would tell the people here, sit down with your teams and imagine what does it look like next week, next month, 5 years, 10 years. Think about where are the choke points, where are the bottlenecks, what will the infrastructure look like that supports this in future? Because the countries in GCC will never allow themselves to be put in this situation again. For sure not. They will not just, everything comes to an end, they go, okay, well, let's hope that doesn't happen again. They will plan, and they plan long term. So I think companies need to think long term. They need to think, what what will their supply chains look in the future? We spoke about it. I mean, everything you summarized today, Farooq, you talk about the change in the regulatory environment, that the customs union will slowly change. We talked about the collaboration. So I think now is the time to think about what does your future supply chain in the Middle East look like, and how do you want to invest, and how do you want to set up your infrastructure to be ready for that?
Yeah, great. One question has been asked from a legal perspective, which is like, are we aware of, besides the ocean carriers, are we aware who have done the end of voyage declarations and used Hagvisby rules in dropping the containers off? And there was one comment, which actually is a news for me, that now the carriers are charging storage charges that the vessel is anchored somewhere in the ocean. It cannot come to Strait of Hormuz or crosses the Strait of Hormuz or crosses Bab el-Mandab. Carriers have started charging storage charges. I'm not sure whether it is true or not, but apparently one of our audience members thinks so, and they have started billing. But besides this, on the force majeure, are you aware of any other major significant element of our supply chain declaring force majeure, and what have been the consequences of that lately? Haris, have you heard anything on that?
Yeah, see, during the times of COVID, we actually got very familiar about the declaration of force majeure. Okay, so today's crisis, right, are still not indicating the whole situation going towards the case of force majeure. Okay, there are still shipments happening. Okay, it's not coming from the right route or the booked route, but still coming through alternate routes. Okay, so yes, some of the carriers have declared end of voyage. Yet these are the terms that were already mentioned in the conditions of BA. So force majeure is a different thing. It actually comprises a lot of other criteria that the government has to fulfill and declare it. I guess legally it's still debatable, though I'm not a legal expert here. I'm just telling you based on my discussion with the legal guys and with each cases that we are facing, right? And going back to our customer with the comments. So it's still not pretty much clear, but with the problem that one of our esteemed fellow is facing, I guess he should get in touch with the legal counselor to understand that what are the options he's currently having.
All right. Okay. Talking about risk management, especially at a strategic level, do we see it differently today? Because, of course, we are quite familiar within the region with war risk rights coverage, which stays for a certain period of time, but then it disappears post 7 days, and as soon as insurance gets wind of it. But what would be the recommendation from risk management perspective that we can share with our participants over here today? First, I will go to Lee, and then I will go to Serge on this one. Are there any new risk management concepts or strategies that could be shared with the audience?
I think not maybe new strategies, but maybe let's talk about this risk management in two components. There's obviously this legal insurance component of risk management, which we want to talk about. And I think I would just, like I said, it's not a new strategy, but I would make sure that you double check that what your risk environment is. Speak to the expert, speak to your insurance company, speak to your legal team. And if you are a smaller company that does have reach out to your forwarder or to your agent and say to them, can you tell me how am I covered? On the transport, on the transit, on the truck. If it moves from a truck, is these stuff move to another truck? What's happening on my insurance risk? I think you should definitely ask the question. You don't need to be the expert. There are experts out there. It's the same as you were talking about the storage at sea. I definitely would have to check that with our legal team. But then there's other risks. I mean, there's obviously the risks to the teams. There's the risk to the warehouses. There's the risk to the staff to make sure that if something happens, you can properly evacuate. And there we have a strong QSHE, Quality, Safe, Healthy Environment team. They are assessing it. So make sure you have in place the processes, the security, the business continuity plans to make sure that the staff are safe as well, because obviously that's a big part of the risk we are facing right now.
Serge?
So maybe I'll jump one step backwards to the previous question and add one small legal point, and then go back to the risk management. So we've seen a case where cases where basically the value of the cargo in some containers was lower than the additional surcharges that are now being added. And many of those customers basically abandoned those containers. They said, then, we don't need those containers anymore because those surcharges are higher than the actual cargo value. So from a legal standpoint, as per the BL terms and conditions, the client would be obligated to pay those charges even when end of voyage happens. Of course, there can be legal perception and different opinions on that point, but I would greatly encourage customers not to make any decisions to just abandon cargo before checking the bill of ladings, consult with their legal team, and ensure that they are well protected and they're making the right decisions. Again, crazy times. Going back to the risk management, I would maybe, as Lee mentioned, we need to ensure that we're building a very strong and resilient setup. So I would maybe encourage every importer and exporter to ensure that they have a very flexible model in their supply chain, ensure that they have diversified routes, suppliers, vendors, even source of inventory, to ensure that they're not dependent on one way of doing things. As disruptions in the logistics can happen in so many different ways. And as Lee mentioned, I would greatly encourage them to, close doors, sit in one room and brainstorm what can happen, what can go wrong, and what can we do about it. And just, draft scenarios and be a little bit creative and see what they can do. Each customer might have different requirements, and I would encourage them to sit with their logistics partners and think together.
Great.
Can I just add one quick point?
Yes, please, Tobias. Yes.
Because one point which sometimes is forgotten, and I think just to make everybody aware, the amount of cyber attacks have dramatically increased, right? I think frauds and I think there's a lot of Iranians trying to do funny things. So also keeping your IT properly secured and shielded against the outside world is very critical. Reminding your people to double check. And I think we had a case the other day where we got, I think, voice messages on WhatsApp, but really with the voice of the applicable senior management board member, right? So with AI and all these things, it's getting easier and easier. And I think everybody should be alerted that the risk of cyber attacks at this point in time is elevated versus the normal times.
Thanks. Very valid point. We have an interesting question, actually, from someone who is from Austria. They are exploring all land freight all the way to UAE. Is it possible in today's environment?
Yes.
Of course.
No, practically yes, but crossing Syria and then I don't think it's going to go. But Syria is still Turkey, up to Turkey is fine, but then going to Syria and then Jordan, Saudi, and UAE, we are doing it. We are aware. But I just want to ask: have we resumed a land freight through Syria? Serge, are you aware of it?
Yes. It's actually ongoing. It depends on companies. Some companies are providing it, some are not. Some have not yet made decision to provide services through Syria. But today, it is something feasible and viable, and we definitely encourage the customer to explore it with their partner logistics vendors. But especially when we talk about Austria all the way to UAE, I think it would make more sense. It would be more efficient, and it would be maybe less risky to just move it by sea freight all the way to the west coast of Saudi, whether King Abdullah Port or Jeddah Islamic Port, and then do the land bridge all the way to UAE. I think this would also be another option that they can definitely explore.
No. Okay. No, the question was specifically to the treacherous areas, whether there are convoys available and everything. But at least, so it's a viable. So this service is now currently available because we stopped Syria about 10 years back. And now if it has resumed, then that's a great news.
I think the problem still is, sorry.
Go ahead. I just wanted to add that some customers were, we've received inquiries that some cargo can go by container. So they were asking for that mode of transport. But Tobias, please.
Yeah, I think the problem is still you have some export control limitations, of course. Syria has been lifted from sanctions in principle. Nevertheless, banking is still an issue. There is still a lot of problems. So I would personally not recommend to send any high value goods. And then back to the point Serge made, if it's then low value goods, is it worth to pay a premium to be a couple of days faster versus the Jeddah solution? I think at this point in time, it seems to be much more advisable to follow Serge's advice to go via Trieste or another port, put it on a ship, bring it to Jeddah. Most probably lead time will not be much different. If all the Red Sea ports would be congested in 1, 2, 3 months down the line, it might be a different situation. But for now, there will be some use cases, but it will be the exceptions, I would say.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Now, coming almost time to wrap it up, and a couple of final questions we have on the chat board, which is coming in.
Farooq, if you can also click on the Q&A tab as well. Yeah. There are more questions over there in the Q&A.
No, I'm swapping between both Q&A and the chat section, so that's why I'm.
Okay.
Now there was a question about which I think we discussed greatly in depth about the customs, transit, and road permit harmonization among GCC countries, which I believe has already been answered. But Harris, coming to you on that one. What would be the major step? What is the key first thing that needs to be done to achieve the harmonization of land freight across GCC?
The first thing was bringing in more trucks, which the government has already relaxed. I guess the next thing could be, easing out some conditions on the container repositioning. Okay, so in coming days, a lot of empty containers are going to come from UAE. Okay, then the flow will actually takes place, right? How the countries in GCC is going to coordinate over that can play a key role. Because again, as you mentioned earlier in your discussion, right, one of the pressing point is that customers are going to be charged with the round trip cost. Okay, this is usually what we do not want to happen, because eventually the landed cost of any cargo would go up exponentially. Okay, so if something needs to be done, I believe that area is something which I'm really looking forward to it, to have some relaxation from the carrier, from the regulator, right, for us to ensure, that we have, lower cost as much as possible.
Okay. All right. Lee, this is one particular specific about a recent announcement Hellmann made of an entry into automotive logistics in the region. How do you see this playing out in the current scenario? And do you believe that it's still a viable play?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's not new so much for Hellmann to be an automotive, but automotive has been identified as one of our global strategies. In the Middle East, we already have significant business, mostly focused on Asian car manufacturers. So we are building a new hub dedicated to supporting those customers. We still very much believe in the growth. I mean, the way I always say it internally, obviously, there's the traditional manufacturers coming out of Europe, and then there's a new age of manufacturers coming out of Asia. And that business was almost high-tech business, you could call it, more than it is automotive, but it is automotive. I strongly believe in it. I think when you see, if you drive down the streets in Dubai, I think it's in many of the countries. 5 years ago, you hardly saw a car coming out of Asia. Now today, it's full. They have a great car, they provide a great service. And I don't see, it might slow down for a little bit now, but already today, we've already had discussions with many customers talking about having increased their spare part requirement, making sure they have inventories and making sure they're ready for longer term growth. So we still strongly believe that the automotive will grow in the region.
All right. Now, a bit of a thought, which probably would be part of your risk management strategy. We are driven, and our network alignment is based on Strait of Hormuz being closed for the time being. What if similar scenario plays out at Bab el-Mandab? We'll start with Tobias. In that kind of a scenario, what happens then?
I think you will lose some of the connections we have currently from containerized shipping, yeah. But I think the more severe impact, I believe, will be on the oil price. So the oil price will further increase because most of the oil coming from the Arabian Gulf is needed in Asia. So typically, I think 85% of the oil going through the Strait goes to Asia ultimately. Now, if the only option is in the future you go to Yanbu, collect the oil and go around Africa, you lose at least 2 weeks more. Which means the pressure which is on the whole Asian side for bunker and jet fuel will even further increase. So I think there it will have more impact on oil price. Yes, it means certain shipping lines which currently are crossing will have to reconsider, but some shipping lines already have decided to go around the Cape of Good Hope. So I think the immediate impact on top of what we have already will be limited.
Okay. Serge, with regards to containerized cargo, do you think it's a risk, or do you think the carriers or the players have already factored that in and they have aligned their network strategies accordingly?
So first of all, let's hope that this doesn't happen. But if it does, yes, as Tobias mentioned, some carriers have already factored that in. Some of them are not passing through Bab el-Mandab, some are. So let's hope this doesn't happen. But if it does, definitely a lot of additional cargo would have to reroute. So you're talking about an extra 20, 30 days more for those containers to get all the way to Jeddah or King Abdullah port. But the biggest concern would be if this risk of Red Sea goes a little bit more to the north. Then this is a risk that we hope it doesn't happen, because we would be then risking the gate, the sea gate into Saudi and the GCC. So then that would have further challenges, and then we would have to be more creative in coming up with more ways to ensure that the flow of cargo comes in. But I think with the resilience of the Saudi leadership and the GCC leadership, I'm sure there are a lot of let's say areas that are being looked into to ensure that this doesn't stop, and hopefully it will not.
Lee? Lee, you are on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I realized. Sorry, obviously the container is a topic, but I think what Tobias said, oil is the real topic if that closes, because for me, the higher the oil price goes, the faster this finishes, because the greater pressure it creates on everybody to come to some sort of resolution. And if you end up with that, with Bab el-Mandab closed, and then the oil price is sitting $150, $160, the world cannot cope with this situation. So then I think you will see a much faster end of hostilities, or coming up to some type of, I hope, peaceful solution. Because also when you talk about that, if you end up that also being closed, then you also, I mean, freight rates will go back to kind of COVID style levels, because you have so much capacity effectively coming out the market with the longer sailing times as well. So, and to be honest, what Serge said, I hadn't thought about that, but that'll also be a thing. If the trouble moves then also further up the Red Sea, then that also creates a significant, maybe unforeseen impact on the industry.
Maybe then the land freight from Europe to GCC could become a real viability.
I haven't checked the theory in moment, but will be interesting. Yeah.
I think all of us will be driving trucks at that time.
Haris, how do you see this?
I actually fully agree with the comments of the panel here. Okay. One, the regulator is already working it. It's already there in their calculation. Okay. And They are trying and they are effectively planning for that. Secondly, I believe the carrier has already taken that into account, with the network shift. All the big carriers are already coming through Cape of Good Hope, okay? And the other carriers, right, they are already factoring in this part. So if something goes wrong, God forbid, things will change. But as Tobias mentioned, the biggest dominant driver is oil. So I believe it's not possible for this issue to happen at Bab el-Mandab Strait. I'm still optimistic about it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Maybe Egypt could also have some role to play in that if that scenario happens with the feeders within the Red Sea. And well, hopefully it will not happen. But I'm sure almost every organization, every diligent organization would have some mitigation and alternative scenarios and route plannings would be in place already in that case. Anyway, uh, I believe this is covering most of the questions. We tried to summarize them. I would like to thank you very much for entertaining and engaging discussion. It has been really helpful. I hope that our participants would have enjoyed and learned something from this one. I want to thank you again, Tobias, Serge, Lee, and Haris. And over to you, Noman. I hope I did not exceed the time limit.
No, Farooq. Actually, a big thank you to you. Enjoyed the session. It was so much enlightening for me. But as a closing statement, and then I will also ask our panel also to share last few insights and their opinion about the session as well. So again, a big thank you to everyone who joined us today. We had more than 600 registrations, and we had an active participation of, for most of the session, around 250 plus people who were actively listening to, and that's a good big number. So on behalf of Supply Chain Talks, I would like to sincerely thank Farooq, you, for managing the discussion so beautifully, and to our distinguished panel speakers, Toby, Lee, Haris, and Serge, for sharing your insights, with your valuable insights and perspective during this session. I would also like to thank all our participants for taking the time out in the evening right now. We have registrations for more than 46 countries, from Australia up to US. So we have covered the globe, from Brazil as well, from South Africa as well, from Ireland. We have covered the four corners of the globe in this session, alhamdulillah. So big thank you to everyone. And at the end, at Supply Chain Talks, our aim is to continue bringing together industry leaders like yourself with other professions for a meaningful conversation that address real business challenges and opportunities across the supply chain and logistics. Thank you once again for being with us today. We look forward to staying connected and welcome you again in our future sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks, Noman. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you.
cheers,
Thank you,
cheers,
everybody.
guys. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Please,
Bye-bye.
thanks, Serge.
Take care.
Ciao, ciao.